Limits of the Flesh, Chapter 81, Fantasy Fiction by Azazyel. High Velocity Art 18. Venelana wasn't a woman to shit-test her man. I knew that. She may tease me, but I could tell looking into her eyes that she was the literal definition of a confident woman. She knew what she wanted, she knew she was beautiful, and most importantly, over the long years, she had long given up on shame for her natural desires. Or maybe her being a devil made her naturally shameless. But either way, I paused at Venelana's offer. However, that hesitation didn't last long as I held in any flinch or reaction with my control over my body to respond with a small smile. Grayfia looks ready to boil over Venelana, I said, diverting the milfs' teasing attention away from me. But my assumption of creating a diversion was for naught as Venelana without a word crawled into my lap and sat slightly on the end of my knees as her soft lovely brown eyes stared into my own as Venelana calmly, but with heat in her voice spoke as she laid her hands on the bottom of my face. Jake. I am waiting for my answer. I reflexively looked down at her massive breasts that were barely touching my chest despite the decent distance between us. But as I looked down I felt her hands tighten and my face was pulled into her breasts, and then she slid forward so her breasts pushed against my upper chest and fully into my face as she sighed. That's the answer I wanted. Venelana. Grayfia hissed. But Venelana only smokily laughed as her hands moved from my face to hold and push her breasts into my face. And obviously, I didn't pull my face away from the great gift she so earnestly gave me. So Jake, I have some rather interesting thoughts I would like to try. Would you mind indulging in this lonely woman and fill her heart with your youthful love? She whispered into the back of my head as she seemingly used her breasts to massage my face, somehow using some fell devil wizardry. I wordlessly nodded into the soft marshmallow pocket of sinful heaven, making her chuckle throatily and with a sexy purr in her voice that made me shudder with the raw era energy Venelana whispered into my very fucking soul. My dear, I have rather sensitive breasts despite their great size and take great joy in that. Could you be an absolute angel and make my nipples as sensitive as my clitoris? And just for you, can you make me lactate again? I shuddered at the sheer fucking degeneracy coming from her. Sure, I regularly messed with the sensitivity of my girls when messing with them. But I didn't actually change their bodies in any permanent fashion. But without a single thought about reasons not to do it. Or in reality, such a heretical thought couldn't in fact exist, so I quickly did so. And Venelana hissed as I made her breasts altogether much more sensitive. Now hold on, dear. She whispered and then kissed the top of my head as she slid down out of my lap and onto the ground. Wordlessly I slipped out of my pants as Venelana with a shrug of her shoulders pulled the straps of her dress down her arms, allowing her massive breasts to free of their terrible cages, and I was able to fully appreciate their beautiful size and shape, with the only sagging being in their great size just naturally making her flesh sag slightly rather than any sort of aging. Venelana was a truly beautiful woman and a perfect example of the term MILF. Now let's see. She whispered as she hefted up her large breasts into her hands and then captured my length between her large breasts, and as my length shifted through the soft pocket of her breast she shivered and lightly bit her lower lip as she looked up at me from between my legs. You bad boy. This is too much. She hissed as with a clap she hefted up and dropped her smooth breasts on my length, making us both shiver at the feeling. Even as Venelana shivered and drooled some saliva into the middle of her breasts to lubricate them to begin actually shuffling her mommy milkers onto my cock, I saw movement out of the corner of my vision. Before I focused on it past the feelings down below, I felt Grayfia climb onto the couch behind me, and I stiffened as I felt her own naked form pressing into my bare back. Jake. You need to take charge of her. Grayfia whispered, her hands trawling across my chest with her nails leaving lines of heat with their movement as Grayfia hot breath filled my ears as she continued. She needs to be put in her place as a member of your harem. Not as the queen of your harem or of yourself, but as your own woman. As much I wanted to just fold over and let the beautiful older women spoil me, I knew that's not what they wanted. They wanted and needed a man to take charge and lead the clan and act as the head of the family. Which included this situation. So even as Venelana gave me a wonderful tit-fuck with her sucking her own breast milk with how large her breasts were allowing her to easily do so, I controlled Venelana's body, and as my own hands filled themselves with her breasts and pushed them onto my cock, I made her breasts spray blue-tinged milk into Venelana's mouth as I used the passion flames of Asmodeus to fill her mind, body, and very soul with a burning pleasure. Fuck. Passion flames, Jake. Venelana whispered as her eyes went dull as the pleasure turned her mind to mush, as those flames easily mentally broke angels and in my hands broke the virgin goddess Artemis. All right, Venelana. You want a man, you want a mind break. I can do that. I whispered as I moved, with Grayfia gracefully holding onto my back with her large breasts flush against my back, with her chin resting on my shoulder as I picked up Venelana easily from off the ground and manhandled her onto her back on the couch beside me, and without any fanfare I held her legs against my shoulders as I pushed down and tinkered with her hips so I could fold the bitch into a mating press. And as my cock sunk into her womanhood, as my manhood penetrated the mother of my first lover, I filled her very tunnel with passion flames, making her eyes roll back as I tinkered with her, to give her straight hentai physics. She became more elastic down there, and I made the cervix a mere suggestion, allowing my expanding cock to sink in and stretch her out like an oversensitive pocket of ecstasy as Venelana's tongue lolled out into an ahigo as I began slamming my larger-than-usual length into her depths. I could feel Grayfia's own lust rising even as she pressed her needy shivering form into my own as I conquered her mother-in-law. Are you going to impregnate her, Jake? Grayfia whispered, in both parts fear and envy at the clear mind break happening as Venelana sprayed out feminine fluids from an orgasm, and I looked at Grayfia with my eyes filled with lust as I took her in her pale beauty. No. I am going to impregnate both of you. I hissed, and as Grayfia shuddered I whispered into her ear. Mealy needs a younger sibling to spoil after all. And with that, I bit Grayfia's ear and cheated as I spanked her ass, making her orgasm powerfully with her eyes rolling up and her body convulsing as she held on to me for dear life. Even as I without any change of pace continued to power fuck into Venelana's helpless depths.